Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Welsh Republic podcast, episode 128 today. And I am here with my guest, Julian Kennan. This is the second time she's coming on my show. Hey, Julia, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Um, I'm not too bad. Just been busy with stuff, just went for a long walk today. The weather here in New Zealand is average, kind of off and on. How about you? What's the weather like where you're at? And what did you do today?
We actually witnessed the raining for the last 3 days because it's a leftover of this storm that hit North Carolina. And I guess the storm is just moving north. That's why the weather was just constant. This just rain every single day. So it absolutely spoiled our weekend, but it's okay. Um, and hopefully it's gonna get better in a few days.
Is it like on the verge of winter there, or is it almost like is it on the verge of winter?
No, actually, no. September and October in New York are usually warm. Sometimes you can just walk in t-shirts. But it's just because of this storm. I think its name was Ophelia. That's why it's kind of cold. It's colder than usual. But I see that the forecast shows that it's going to be 24 on Sunday. It's going to be sunny, so I guess it's back to summer.
You know, America, New York City must be so beautiful in winter, being able to go to the park and see the snow there. Oh, it'd be so awesome to go over there, one time and see it during the winter. Maybe it's not as good as it used to be, but.
Yeah, actually, I miss snow because I grew up in Russia, and Russia is very, very snowy in winter. And last winter in New York, we didn't have snow, almost nothing, maybe like a day or something. But in Russia, sometimes you just go to sleep, you wake up, and it's like several inches of snow. So and it's normal, and every single branch on every single tree is just like covered in ice and snow. So it's actually very beautiful, and I kind of miss that in New York. But okay, the fall is very beautiful though. So I like it better than in Russia because in Russia it's very rainy in the fall. It's cold. Here it's warm and nice. And
Well,
it's pumpkin spice everywhere. So basically everything is pumpkin spice. Everything, coffee, everything, pumpkin
oh, I can
spice.
imagine it's very good, the coffee there. What would you say is like, are you a fan of ice skating?
Not really. I mean, I did it when I was in Russia. You actually get ice skating. You can go to the lake because it's frozen. And I lived maybe like 5-10 minutes walking from the lake. But I rarely do ice skating, to be frank.
What would you say, like, is the most popular area to go ice skating in Russia?
In Russia, probably Baikal. Baikal Lake is beautiful. I've never been there myself, but I would gladly travel. Probably maybe in a few years. It's absolutely beautiful. I've seen pictures and videos. A lot of bloggers travel there. They film the beautiful content. It's amazing. So I would say if you like nature and ice skating, that's probably the place. Other than that, people just ice skate on smaller lakes everywhere because it's cold enough in Russia, so the lakes are frozen, so you don't actually drown.
What about like for skiing? Like, is there any popular mountain, ski resort in Russia that a lot of people go to?
I believe in Sochi, although I
Oh
might be
yeah, yeah, Sochi,
mistaken.
of course, yeah. I
Yeah,
didn't.
I think it's in Sochi. Other than that, I'll be honest, I've never tried it, and I'm like my friends suggested for me to try it here, and I'm kind of terrified.
Oh, you should go
um,
for it. I can imagine, going to New York and going to the famous ice skating ring, that in the park. I reckon that would be so cool, really cool to go to. You should definitely try that one time, Julia.
no, you ask about the skiing, so I was talking about the skiing. Ice skating,
Oh, no,
yeah, I
no, no,
did it in
sorry. The
Russia.
ice skating ring,
Yeah,
in New York. And
ice
also,
skating, yeah. I
yeah,
think I think we tried it here once in New York. A lot of people actually go for ice skating in the Central Park. So, but again, I'm not super into it. So it's just it like a lot of people. You can bump into someone, but it's okay.
here in New Zealand, the most popular skiing areas we have is in Mount Hurupayu, which is in like the middle of the North Island, and then you've got Queenstown, and Queenstown is beautiful for skiing. It's just so stunning, like it is just something out, just gorgeous, man, really gorgeous.
No, I can imagine. I want to travel to New Zealand one day because it's my dream from childhood. Because I want to see these Hobbit lands and these Hobbit
Hobbleton,
villages.
Hobbleton.
Yeah. Yeah. I like one of my favorite movies is the Lord of the Rings, so that's why I kind of want to travel there.
If you ever get a chance, you should also do a crossing called the Turangi Crossing. So that's where, they have Mount Doom. I went on that crossing when I was a lot younger, and wow, it's gorgeous. The views there, it's just beautiful. It's stunning. It really is stunning. And you've got the Southern Alps. That's where they filmed the scene where they were lighting the beacons in Lord of the Rings 3. Wow, Lord of the Rings is just,
Oh wow.
it
Yeah.
is really good.
Yeah, well, one country at a time. So I kind of putting up the list where I want to go when I'm gonna travel next.
What other countries would you like to go to, Julia?
England, absolutely England. I actually have been to England, but it's been like a short trip. It was maybe like 8 to 10 days, and I absolutely loved it. Maybe I was living probably in England in the past life because I'm fascinated by English history. I like to watch these old movies about this old time in England. I studied their monarchy tree. I'm just fascinated by all of that. So I would like to visit Scotland, Ireland. So I honestly I want to travel there. But I think you would need like more time for it in order to like explore everything. Um,
What about
10
Wales?
days.
What about Wales?
Well, yeah, everywhere. Like I want to explore everywhere because like this short trip I had many years ago. Well, it was just that it was short. So, but I really want to travel there.
So, talking about that, Julia, what have you been up to lately, and what projects have you been working on like the political side, and what have you been researching on?
That's as usual, just trying to catch up on all the news because I read a lot of sources and it takes a lot of time because although I try to get absolutely everything, so I'm aware of everything. It's absolutely impossible because you have life, you have work, you have other, you have personal life, you have projects, and then you need to catch up on everything. So I might miss something, but I try to educate myself on every single thing, and then some fire pops up somewhere around the world, like Armenia and Azerbaijan. There is something going on in Serbia, and then something going on in other parts of the world. Main focus usually on Russia and Ukraine because I've been passionate about that since 2013. I started following this very early, and I try to be aware of everything that's going on. Um, and it takes a lot of time. And the news cycle is travels so fast. So you just like something that happened maybe like a week ago, it feels like it happened maybe a
Yeah,
month
it,
ago.
it can hit you really quickly. What would you? Is
Yeah.
there any like news lately that's really caught your eye? That's really made you feel very like, oh, like very erotic?
Yeah, honestly, every day something is going on. The recent story, of course, is how Canadian government got so much hate for their standing ovation
Yeah,
for the probably last surviving Nazi. Of course, I'm talking about Yaroslav Hunka, who immigrated from Ukraine to Canada probably many years ago. um, but he was actually in Waffen SS division, so that means that he was fighting against Russia. And I wonder when they introduced him and say, well, he was fighting against Russia, which at that point was, of course, Soviet Union, and these MPs, these politicians, it didn't even cross, their minds that, well, that means that he was probably fighting on the side of Germany. And then I see that in a day, they started walking everything back. They started apologizing. They started
even
writing that
even
it's
the
uncomfortable.
UN has condemned them for it. Like they're getting so much hate, and there are even leftist, news articles who are criticizing Canada for this.
Yeah, so the thing is, Polish ambassador demanded an apology, which is surprising in a way because Poland was actually kind of silent about a lot of these things. Sometimes they would say something like, "Oh, you praise Bandera," but then they would carry on shipping all of this aid to Ukraine. But this time, Poland is more and more vocal, against glorification of Nazis perpetrated by Ukraine. So, and when I saw, honestly, I would on from the Canadian government, I would expect from them just mask off and just admit what happened because they understand perfectly well what they support. This case might be just something that a lot of people noticed, and it was retweeted a million times, so a lot of people were aware of it. So that's why they apologized, the MPs, Trudeau government there, right? But at the same time, when they ship this military aid, when they impose sanctions on Russia, they understand perfectly well what they support in Ukraine. So they might just apologize right now, but they continue shipping aid there and basically supporting descendants of the same people who Yaroslav Hunka is. So
Yeah,
I just
like seeing that, as a Westerner, it's just disgraceful because it's just like an insult to all the Canadians who fought against, the Nazis in World War II, to the British people who fought against the Nazis in World War II, and even the Russians, even the Soviets who did, for Canada, for a country, for a government like Canada who fund Black Lives Matter, and all those people who will go on about like how, oh, they're against fascism, and then for them to, like applaud a Nazi person is just ridiculous. And isn't it funny because like isn't the Canadian vice prime minister, isn't she a descendant of someone who died from a Holocaust? For like one of her relatives like died in the Holocaust. Is that true? Like I remember some Canadian Parliament member. Is that correct?
yeah, so she said that she had Jewish relatives, so and she said something to the degree that it was uncomfortable. So and I just let's not talk about this. So that's basically their main message, which is honestly, if they just admit, yes, that's what we support, I would be okay with that. It's disgusting, obviously, but at the same time, I would prefer them to say honestly and openly what they do and what they support because they still support it. They might apologize, but they still support this ideology. Just be more upfront and honest about this. If they're not if they're not comfortable talking about this, maybe then the support that they're providing, maybe there's something wrong. But they continue just this with this double standard, which is, that's what we have every single day. We have double standards all the time. Honestly, what they do is like, it's not surprising to me anymore. All these countries, they do something like that all the time. Just look at the Baltics, just look at what Latvia is doing, and they just one up each other all the time. And they're just, they so normalized it that for me it was normalized. So like when I see news about that, I'm not like surprised. It's upsetting because you see, when people just embellish the history of Nazism, when they support this horrible ideology, and you just look at this, well, what is this? But it's not surprising anymore. I stopped being surprised last year, probably, when I've seen, these leaders of Western countries, what they do and what they support, and how people just blind the support. But I see that a lot of people actually, they're not fooled by the media. They're not fooled by the propaganda, and they actually see what's going on. So that's that's something that's comforting, because at least there is some hope that people understand what's actually going on the front lines.
One thing is, there's an article I saw by Sputnik, and it's very interesting. And it says here, untold story of how Canada became a safe haven for the Ukrainian Nazis during the World War II era. It says here, before World War II, the Ukrainian Nazis they were very pro-labor, very pro-Moscow, very anti-fascist, but that began to change after the arrival of 1,000 Ukrainian Nazi collaborators wanted for war crimes across the world. What is your thoughts on that, like, and what facts do you know, like, about the fact that Canada, was a safe haven for Ukrainian Nazis, like, during the time of World War II? What is your opinion on that?
I actually am not super knowledgeable about that specific fact. I know that a lot of Nazis immigrated over there in collaborators, so they were Ukrainians, but they were collaborating with Nazis, right? They supported this ideology. But I see that when these immigrants, when they moved to the Western countries, they actually brought this ideology with them, and they started just explaining this to their children, and this ideology is spread further, so it can't die out. And I think that was done on purpose. That's why when you see right now little kids, they um, yell these slogans that was created by Bandera. um, that's because of the parents and grandparents. So that ideology never died out. It's just it was hiding, and the roots were not like removed, thanks to the Soviet Union as well, because Soviet Union gave amnesty to a lot of these banderids and the UPA own organizations, and all of the followers. And then in after the collapse of Soviet Union, it sprung just right back.
Mm-hmm. I think it's absolutely disgraceful. It also goes back to the fact, during the Nuremberg trials, the CIA actually helped a lot of the Ukrainian Nazis get away and like run away from the Nuremberg trials, which was pretty scary. That was from a leaked document that I saw. It's unbelievable, isn't it, Julia?
Um, it is in a way, but I think that that group of Ukrainians, they were very nationalistic, right? So they carried those ideas. They very they were very proud of it, and that's in a way you can see it as an asset that you can use against someone. that's what was used against Russia in this case, because this ideology, you cannot just invent it. You have to have, people who believe in it. And I think you mentioned about this leaked CIA document. There were documents. I think they were declassified, and it dates back in the 50s,
Yeah.
either late 40s or 50s, when they were talking how they can use it against Russia. They were talking about the eastern part of Ukraine that is heavily pro-Russia, in the western Ukraine, which is nationalistic, right? Nationalistic part of Ukraine, and how these people can be used to carry out this, murders and everything, and then they can be used to instigate a civil war, and essentially later on to be used against Russia. And that's what actually happened in a way, right? So yes, these people were used. I don't really understand if they know about this, if they actually have an idea that they were used. For example, Ukraine is used right now, and maybe they will figure it out at the very end, because at one point the military aid, the money, the flow of money, it ends, it stops. I
Especially
don't
with
believe that.
Poland, just saying that they're stopping funding now. They've had enough of it. They're moving on. I heard rumors Hungary might stop soon. It's just
Yeah.
people are moving on. They've had enough.
Poland has different goals here. It's my personal conviction, and I believe that at some point in time, Poland will take part of Ukraine. People might disagree with this, but a lot of Poles, they actually believe that Lviv region belongs to Poland. And I personally spoke to some Poles who say, "Yeah, that's our territory. We want it back." Um,
How come?
so
How come Poland lost that region? Like, how is it historically Poland, and like, what other facts do you think people need to know to understand that situation?
So it was actually carved out because if you look at the map of Ukraine, Ukraine was made of several parts, right? You have Crimea, you have the territory that belonged to Hungary at that time. Then you have, and that's why, by the way, you still have a lot of Hungary people living in the parts of Ukraine. They actually have the passports of Hungary. They have education in Hungarian, and they were very much against these laws that the education has to be carried in Ukrainian. Because they believe that it interfered with their freedom. They cannot actually continue study, in what they consider native language. And then some of the parts were, of course, that belong to Poland. It's, if you look at the map, it's Lviv, I believe, Ivano-Frankivsk. Let me see the actual map. um,
Did you want to show the
yeah.
map on the stream? Did you
Ah,
or no?
yeah, I don't believe I can actually share it.
No, that's all good.
Yeah, so I can't really share it. So, and Poland believes that those territories belong to them and they want it back. That's why actually these territories that's nearby where Volhynia massacre were committed, because a lot of these villages, they had either mixed population. Some of the villages were like Ukrainian, Poland, and then there were, there were fights all the time,
It
until
says that
and the,
360,000 Polish civilians were killed by the Ukrainian Nazis at the time.
oh yeah, I mean, I don't know exact number, but the peak was Volhynia massacre for sure. So Volhynia massacre, of course, it didn't happen just all of a sudden. because it actually happened in 1943, right? So obviously something was going on before that. That's why you have this organization. One of them was it was called OUN, so it's Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, right? Um, it was founded some in early 20th century, and that organization basically espoused nationalist and militarist ideology. They try to achieve their goals through both political means and then armed struggle. And there's also Ukrainian insurgent army, which is called UPA. Maybe you heard about this, own UPA. Probably heard about Bandera, right? So
Yeah, Stefan Bender, yeah, the far right.
um,
Wrote a
right,
post.
right. So UPA was basically like an extension of OUN. They were kind of different. They were different leaders. They kind of overlapped each other. And the thing is, both OUN and UPA, they started to be embellished under President Yushchenko. So President Yushchenko came to power in early 2000 when that was the first Maidan. The first Maidan revolution gave pro-Western president to Ukraine, which was Yushchenko. And then the peak of this heroization of all of this own UPA, we all can witness right now, because right now something that the majority of Ukrainians were uncomfortable with for a long time because of this history of I would say problematic history. Now Ukrainians, you see that they fully embrace this ideology. They fully believe in it. They fully believe that these people were actually heroes. It's on full display. They're no longer ashamed of it. A lot of people can witness that, and they not only not ashamed of it, they actually proud. You see them carrying this signs in honor of Bandera. They carry his pictures. Then they name others like Shukevich. They name streets. So in this in when you say to other people, when you try to explain history, even a little bit of it, when you try to show them some kind of facts, um, especially if we're talking about the Westerners who never even studied the history of Ukraine. Hell, some of them didn't even know what Ukraine is up until last year.
A lot of them wouldn't be able to show if it's on the map. They wouldn't be able to
Yeah,
know where it is.
yeah. And all of when you try to tell these people, their reaction is, well, this is Putin's propaganda. This is Russian propaganda. Read a book. And in reality, this is actually a result, I would say, of a concerted work that have been carried out since the 90s, since the fall of the Soviet Union. So you have two generations of Ukrainians who were schooled with the books that were rewritten. They picture Bandera and Shukevich as heroes.
So basically, like rewriting history, because I was
Absolutely.
because Julia, I was actually on a Twitter space today, and it was quite interesting. And DG Geopolitics was talking on there. I didn't speak on the Twitter space because I get very nervous in group conversations. And she was mentioning like how there was Ukrainian propaganda going on, that the Ukrainians invented the pyramids, they invented writing, they invented gunpowder. Like
Yeah, that's
it's
actually
like
true. That's true, but to an extent, because some of these mentioning are fake. That's why it takes me a lot of time to actually vet information. Uh, because obviously, sometimes if I see something in the Telegram channels, especially if it's pro-Russia channels, I have to vet the information I get, because it may be fake, it may be Photoshop. So some of it is fake, but some of it is absolutely true. I I I still remember the ambassador to UN from Russia. He actually showed a textbook
yeah,
that the Russian
I
soldiers
know.
found, and in that textbook, it says that French people actually they came from Ukrainians.
No.
I the other day I saw a picture of a book, like a children book, that is sold somewhere in Ukraine, and they show like the dinosaurs, basically like they talk about the civilization, Ukrainian civilization. This is wild. Honestly, this is wild. It is wild to me. You know why? I understand they can actually say to me that, well, you grew up in Russia, you probably were studying written books, but if we look at the Soviet Union, the education in Soviet Union was basically universal, no matter when, no matter where people lived, right? So it was Ukraine, it was Belarus or Russia. They studied the same thing. How people in their 50s, in their 60s, who grew up in Soviet Union, how they can look at this and they say, yes, well, this is absolutely true. They can't. I just don't know how they can explain it. How they can explain that the Stepan Bandera is celebrated. He's a hero of Ukraine. They sing songs about him. They celebrate his birthday. Every New Year, they have this basically a march with tiki torches. I don't know if you've seen pictures or videos of
Yes,
it.
I have, and
Um,
it's very disturbing. It is
yeah,
very disturbing. It looks
it,
very, very far right stuff you would see in a far right march.
because it is. And then when you if you remember, during the Trump administration there was this far right march in
Charlottesville.
Charlottesville. Yeah,
Charlottesville.
and they made a fuss about this. They said, well, this is far right, what's going on, this with sticky torches, this is anti-Semitic. And then they made up the story about this phrase that Trump used, that the very fine people hoax, right? Because they absolutely misinterpreted, cut something from his speech. And then they would look at something in Ukraine, at the same tiki torches, same march, even more, and they just say, well, it's fine, it's because they fight Russia.
Mhm.
um so they create monuments honoring him. They rename so many streets. Probably every Ukrainian city right now has some street named in honor of Bandera or Shukevich. And sometimes I just wonder, okay, well, you try to make them hero, but do you know what they actually did? Because I don't understand how people who can read history and just say, well, yeah, this is our hero. They may hate Russia. It's fine. I mean, it's not fine if you hate other people, but if this is something that they believe in, this is their ideology. Well, well, what are we going to do about this?
As in being in politics, Julia, and your time studying this, when you've talked to like Ukrainians on Twitter and stuff, what would you like? And Ukrainians who say, "Oh, the propaganda," Stefan Dender was actually a good person. He was great. He was brilliant, and all that. What would you say is the most frustrating things that that Ukrainian supporters say about Stefan Bandera that really just gets on your nerves? That really is just, oh.
I mean, just the fact that they glorify him, that thing alone can frustrate anybody.
What would you say
Um,
is like the most irritating debate you've had with a Ukrainian Nazi supporter over Stefan Bandera?
Uh, I don't remember. I don't recall specifically arguing about Stepan Bandera. It's just sometimes when people say things like this, I just I just grow tired because I need to explain to them so many things and it's tiresome. And it's hard to do when people are, they're not receptive of the information that you give them, because no matter what you say, they will tell, well, this is Russian propaganda. They cannot actually, detach from that. It's not about Putin, it's not about Russia. Um, if you want to hate Putin, like you can do that, but at the same time, like look at the facts. This is what Bandera did, what followers did. So many people were massacred in such brutal way that if you read everything, it will just give you nightmares, and you just start wondering, well, how a human being can do something like this. It's just like what is in their minds that they think that this is okay to kill people in that way. So, but I see that slowly, people are waking up. Obviously, not hardcore Ukrainians who believe absolutely everything. I try to show them the facts. It's okay to read both sides. It's actually, I would recommend everybody to read both sides. That's why I always read Ukrainian side. I always read Russian side. I try to see analysis from the Westerners, how they view the situation. But it's one thing when we speak about analysis and opinion. Like, people might hate Putin, it's okay. They might love him, it's okay. But it's not a matter of opinion. Sometimes there are things that actually happen, and that fact you cannot change. If Volhynia massacre happened, you cannot have an opinion on that, because it's the thing that happened. And the most frustrating thing is when they try to embellish it, and then one piece by piece they try to change what actually happened. That's the most frustrating thing, because it's a lie.
Yeah, it is.
That
Julia, is your connection okay? Or is it
yeah,
all good?
yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So right now, Julia, a lot of people right now, I saw a video set where Larry Johnson, I think is his name, said that a lot of conspiracy theorists have said that the CIA are getting fed up with Zelensky. They're going to replace him. There's been rumors that there could be a military coup that could happen in Ukraine and overthrow Zelensky. Do you think we're on that last edge of Zelensky going out, or especially though with him like asking money for to have elections in Ukraine and like canceling democracy in Ukraine, which was very unlawful of him, when in fact Ukraine isn't a democracy, especially when it's cancelled, especially in his administration's cancelled like 19 parties during his time in office.
yeah.
How do you see it ending with Lisinski? What do you think will
Um,
happen?
so this question is actually very complex, because the rumors about the West replacing Zelensky um, actually have gone back to last year. I would say maybe around July of 2022, because you would see occasionally the pictures of Zelensky on the magazine, right, on the magazine cover somewhere in Germany, and that's a signal, right? It sends a signal. Well, at that time, Ukraine was not doing well on the front lines, and the West was kind of sending the signals to Zelensky administration that, well, you can't be replaced. Some people speculated that it might be Budanov, but the thing is, Budanov is, I would not think that he's the right person for that. I think that the West also understands that. So they probably tried to prop up Zelensky. The problem is right now, Zelensky is probably trying to get rid of him. If you look right now, any news about Zelensky, you can't really find a lot of information. I mean, he would pop up here and there, but at the same time, the Zelensky administration is trying to get rid, so to speak, in terms of PR. They try to get rid of all the other competitors, because the election should be done next year. The West signaled that they actually want Ukraine to have an election, as they called honest election, as if Ukraine ever had honest election, but it's okay. It's another question. Lindsey Graham recently said, well, the best thing right now for Ukraine is to actually carry on with election. However they're going to do it, I don't know, because a lot of Ukrainians actually fled the country. Right.
I
So,
saw news that like a lot of Ukrainian pharmacists are leaving Ukraine too.
I would need to check that information. I've heard about this. This is because Ukraine actually in the early stages of drafting women. Um, they're gonna do it. They just start with women who have medical education. That includes pharmacists and some women who understand how this game is played. They want to leave early. That's the thing, and you can understand them. Uh, they don't want to fight for for someone else's interests. Um, some men and women in Ukraine, they still think that they fight for Ukrainian land. That's not true.
Hmm.
Objectively, that's not true. So, but going back to the election question, I think in a few weeks we will see if you know if Ukraine is actually planning to do something like this. The problem is that a lot of Westerners, they actually grew tired of Zelensky. He changed. He changed a lot, and it's basically public knowledge that it's not Zelensky who rules Ukraine. It's actually Yermak, Andrew Yermak, who is ethnically Russian, by the way. So that's another thing. He has relatives in Russia. I believe his aunt lives in Russia. So he's actually, has a lot of influence. And he makes a lot of decisions for Zelensky, considering that Zelensky, more often than not, is under the influence of some things. Let's just put
Like
it this way.
BlackRock, many people. What is your opinion on like the news where someone said the war they want to plan it to last until the 2030s? And what is your opinion about like BlackRock coming in and potentially using like Ukraine as a new similar state to Israel, like you know, using like United States taxpayer dollars to help build Ukraine after this war? What is your opinion towards that?
So, with regard to BlackRock, I mean, it's not surprising, but if you want to know my opinion, I don't think it's going to work out. Ukrainians, they still have Russian or Soviet mentality. They're not Westerners. They're not going to play like that. Um, I see how Western ideology is pushed on Ukrainian people, and some people are receptive of it. But most of them actually are not. It's not democracy in any way, shape, or form, obviously. And I think everyone who follows this war actually understands it perfectly right now. So, with regard to the number, like I would not put any number right now. 2030, it's too far out. I don't think that Ukraine will be able to last that long. I don't think that Russia will be fighting for that long because a lot of Russian elites are economically they're hurting, and they are not happy, they're not pleased with what's going on. That's the thing about Russian elites, and the Russian government in general. Russian elites, the oligarchs in the Russian government, they're not unified around Putin. If, I'll tell you right now, Russia probably would have ended everything last year if everyone was unified around Putin and tried to just push until the western border of Ukraine and just basically complete what they call a special military operation. But you see that the fighting is still ongoing, right? Because there are some forces behind the curtain that they have their own interests and they're not happy with this war because it hurt them economically. Because a lot of these, oligarchs and very rich people from Russia, they were trading with the West, and they're still trying to do right now. So why would they do something like this? Why would they try to cut ties with the West if their interests are in the West? That's the question. And I understand that a lot of people in the West who view this war and they are sympathetic with Russia and they feel like, well, Russia should end it and just achieve the victory. But the problem is not everyone in Russian government actually wants to achieve the victory. Some people would very much. like to lose this war because it means that they can return to status quo. And it's uncomfortable for some people to hear. And people would say, well, this is not patriotic. Like, why would you say something against Russia? I mean, it's not against Russia, it's against the Russian government. And it's something that is true. You just need to read proper sources in order to understand it. When these accident, so to speak, with Prigozhin happen, it didn't happen just on its own, right? It didn't
What do you
happen.
think about the Prigozhin incident? Do you think Putin killed him, or do you think it was the CIA that did that?
No, I don't think that it was CIA. I don't think that there was any involvement from the West at all. I mean, maybe there is like some tiny, tiny percent. I honestly, I cannot imagine how they can do something near Moscow. That would be very problematic because it means that the Western intelligence can carry out their missions deep inside Russia. Um, that's why I just don't believe in the theory. But with regard to who did it, I have to be careful with what I say. I think that it was done by someone close to Shoigu. I'll tell you why, because for the past year, Prigozhin and Shoigu, they were at odds with each other. Shoigu meaning that he represents the military of defense of Russia. If there is a possibility that it was done by Putin, yeah, there is a possibility. I don't think that I lean to that theory that it was
Same
actually
here.
done
I
by
don't think
Putin.
it was Putin. I don't think it
The,
was Putin.
the thing is, I'm not sure what Putin can get out of it. I know some people would just say, well, this is because Prigozhin did his shot against Putin, which was not against Putin, to be frank. It was against Gerasimov and Shoigu, but it's okay. I mean, if it's that theory, if you want to believe this is because it was a mutiny and Putin does not forgive betrayal, why would he do something like this publicly near Moscow? Why would he kill several other people inside? Especially considering how Wagner achieved and how much Wagner achieved actually in the past year. The problem with actually thinking that this was done not by Putin, that theory is even worse because that means that Putin does not have full control. And I don't like the theory, but I lean to it because the thing is with Wagner, Wagner has a lot of influence in Africa, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of negotiations were done directly by Prigozhin. So the Russian Minister of Defense, they actually try to take control of of these negotiations from Prigozhin, from Wagner, and they were not successful because Africans did not believe Russian MLD. They wanted to deal with Prigozhin. So how do you force Africans to basically get protection from Russian MOD? You decapitate the Wagner Group. I think this is more likely version of what happened. Again, there might be some other forces involved here, but what bothers me a lot in this case that one by one people with a lot of influence in Russia who were very patriotic and who wanted to actually achieve victory. We're talking about Sorovikin, we're talking about Strelkov, we're talking about Prigozhin, right? Regardless of what you think about these people, they actually wanted to achieve victory and they spoke about the issues, they spoke about the problems that Russian MOD has. And one by one, they were kind of pushed away, like in case with Sorovikin. Prigozhin was killed, and Igor Strelkov right now, he's in jail.
I see. So, Julia, talking about the Russian situation, you wanted to talk about the Armenian situation that has just come up with what's that country next to it again? It's
Azerbaijan.
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 So,
Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan. That's what it's called.
Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan.
Az-
It's very hard to for
okay.
someone.
Azerbaijan.
Yeah.
So
So,
all of them were ex
yeah. Sorry,
Soviet
before we,
Soviet
I just
republics.
I just wanted to ask. Yeah, they were a part of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
So, tell me about your opinion on that conflict. You know that like a lot of people are saying that Azerbaijan is the one that is committing genocide against Armenians, and that Armenia is controlled by a globalist government. Especially when you look at a lot of
Hmm.
the Armenians protesting. What is
Hmm.
your opinion on that? And like, what do you? How do you see like what? Who do you side with on that war? And like, who do you think's in the right and the wrong? And explain the history between those two from what you know.
Yeah, so the thing is, like, I would have to tread lightly here because I'm not super knowledgeable about the history of Nagorno-Karabakh. So Nagorno-Karabakh was actually like back and forth between Armenia and Azerbaijan in the 20th
So,
century.
do you think it is Armenian or Azerbaijani?
The thing is, Nagorno-Karabakh is populated by Armenians, but it's kind of independent because when Soviet Union fell, um, then or even before that, Nagorno-Karabakh, like population of Nagorno-Karabakh, I think like 99%, they had a referendum, so they voted to be independent, but they're inside of Azerbaijan. um, there were a couple of wars. So one of them was in the 90s, and then there was another one pretty much recently in 2020 between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And then obviously now Azerbaijan basically, ended the entire situation. The problem is in 2020, Armenia actually accepted that Nagorno-Karabakh is the territory of Azerbaijan.
Mhm.
So, from my understanding, Azerbaijan offered Armenians who live there, and they have been living there historically. Um,
The international
they were
community also recognized it as its own independent state and also as a
right.
part of Azerbaijan, despite being inhabited by Armenians.
Right. So the thing is, Azerbaijan with Armenia, they have been fighting, for a very long time, and I, things that Azerbaijan did, I think this is something similar to Ukrainians try to do in Donbass, and did essentially. I understand sometimes media would not say about these things publicly because it's a very convenient way for them to lie and omit truth. Um, and I would need to be very careful about what you say. My one of my best friends is actually Armenian, and I am very sympathetic of his position, but I don't know a lot about this conflict from the beginning to make some kind of opinion. Obviously, if I want to analyze it from like what's going on today, um, I think it means that Armenia will probably lose some territories in the future because Nagorno-Karabakh is just one of the pieces. There are several key players in this region. Iran is one of them, and then there's also Turkey. Turkey is aligned very much with Azerbaijan, and I think that Azerbaijan did what it did with the full support of Turkey, who recently just had conversation with Russia, right? At the
Mhm.
same time, Armenia was very much aligned with Russia for a very long time. Russia and Armenia had great relationship. Some Armenians were upset with Russia, understandably so.
With them
And then,
protesting outside of the embassy right now, of the Russian embassy in Armenia.
yeah, yeah, we will get back to that point. The thing is, when Armenians voted for Nikol Pashinyan, who is funded by Soros. He is openly like you can see pictures of him
Yeah.
together with Soros, right? Um, so when Armenians vote for Pashinyan, um, what was expected out of it? That he's going to help Armenians living in Nagorno Karabakh? He did not. He just admitted that they don't have an army there. They cannot support them. And the first thing Nicole Pashinyan did, called to France, called to speak with Blinken, and only then called Moscow. And after that, he wants to blame Russia for what? um, a lot of people don't understand what Russian peacekeepers are doing over there. The thing is, by the decree between Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Russia, Russia has some peacekeepers over there in that territory, but they're not combatant. So, meaning that they cannot actually use the weapons against someone unless it's in defense, right? So they help Armenians right now, but from what I've heard, a lot of people were killed. A lot of Armenians were killed, and what happens next probably is I ethnic cleansing one of them. So they would probably force people to get the citizenship of Azerbaijan. They would probably try to forcibly, to re-educate these people. So meaning that the that in terms of language, this is something that Ukraine tried again with Donbass. So we have like parallel situations here. Obviously, the situations are different. Um, Armenia, Azerbaijan uh, had their own history. Ukraine and Russia had their own history, but at the same time, it's a tragedy, honestly. And Russia had a great influence on Armenia, and now Russia basically lost this influence. A lot of analysts, like who analyze the situation in Russia, they actually sad. They're sad to admit that Russia lost this sphere of influence with Armenia. Armenia right now is more aligned with the West than with Russia. But that did happen overnight. The thing is, Russian government did not do anything to keep Armenia in its in its sphere of influence, and Armenia just did these war games with the United States. They probably at some point would like to get into NATO, and we'll see how it goes. But the problem is some of the territories of Armenia. Turkey actually look at them as something worth taking. So, which means that more trouble for Armenia.
Would you say that Turkey provoked the largest hostiles as a part of its neo-Ottoman strategy?
Honestly, I don't know what Turkey is doing, but you have to give it to Erdogan. Whatever he does only for his people. He tries. You see, even with Ukraine, you see how he actually supplies weapons to Ukraine at the same time, and he tries to align with Putin. How does it work? So he doesn't choose sides, but he plays to his own advantage. So if it's beneficial for Turkey to sell weapons to Ukraine, they're gonna do that. If it's beneficial to kind of play, with Putin and get some kind of advantage, um, to create this, we're talking about the pipeline, we're talking about the grain deal, we're talking about a lot of things. He's for it. If the West chooses the side openly and say, well, we're going to support Ukraine, we're going to be fully against Russia, um, they do something on the side, like they still buy Russian oil, they still buy Russian resources like gas and oil and uranium, everything. But they do it kind of like behind the curtain, so they try to hide it. Um, Turkey just doesn't give a damn. They just do whatever they want because they're a very powerful player. Turkey also can manipulate Europe. We're talking about the migrant crisis. They successfully manipulated for the past few years because a lot of these migrants, they go through territory of Turkey, and then Erdogan just say to Europe, well, if you're not gonna play with me, then you're gonna get way more migrants over there, which is a headache for Italy, for Germany, for Sweden. So Turkey is very cunning player in this case, but whatever they do it to their benefit. While, for example, European countries, what they do, they actually shoot themselves in the foot. So if you look at the state of the economy in Germany, in Italy, France, it all goes downhill. They still continue to supply money and weapons to Ukraine, even if it hurts them. They're still gonna do it. Turkey, no, they do it the smart way. But you can't be mad at them. Erdogan is doing what's best for his people.
So,
So
would you say that Azerbaijan started a war? Started personally, I think they did. But in your opinion, do you think Azerbaijan started a legal war of aggression against Armenia, especially when four UNSC resolutions 822, 853, 874, 884 have been passed, demanding, that Armenian withdraw its forces from Azerbaijan, which is refused. What's your opinion on that?
the thing is, Armenia does not have an army there. Pashinyan just recently admitted just that. We have to look at the fact that Armenia accepted that the territory of Nagorno Karabakh is actually the territory of Azerbaijan. If you look at this fact alone from this perspective, if Armenia wanted to keep Nagorno Karabakh in its backyard, right? If Armenia wanted to actually um, have this influence over there, why they don't want to defend it? So they don't have an army over there. They just said that, well, it belongs to Azerbaijan.
Mm,
Then what can you expect, like from Moscow? Because obviously Armenia blamed Moscow for it, and that's just logical. And when the war gonna break out, and it's gonna break out, it's just a start. Nagorno Karabakh is just a start. We have to understand it. They're gonna blame Russia anyway.
mhm.
So I mean, I don't like, and I might not like what Azerbaijan did, but if no one was there to defend Nagorno Karabakh, then like who do we blame here? I just feel bad for the people because these people were betrayed by Pashinyan. And I've seen a lot of opinions from Armenians who, and you see them in Yerevan. They on this square every day. They just demand for Pashinyan to resign. But they voted for him many years ago.
Mm.
I mean, how can you be mad at like I think that was something that was expected of Pashinyan because this situation in Nagorno Karabakh was always, difficult and complicated. So someone had to do something about this, and Pashinyan just did.
So, Julia, back in the Soviet Union times, what would you say, was Armenia's greatest contribution to the Soviet Union at the time? What was it? what is one thing that really you like about Armenian history that a lot of Westerners don't understand, and what would you say is one place you would love to go visit in Armenia?
I mean, again, this is not the subject I'm super knowledgeable about. I apologize for it, but I've never been to Armenia. So maybe one day I'll travel there, definitely. Um, the products from Armenia, obviously the wines and the cognacs. I mean, that's what comes to mind. Obviously, Armenia probably contributed more than that, of course. But from what I gathered, how things were overall in Soviet Union, a lot of these people from different republics, be it Armenia or Azerbaijan or Ukraine, they like for the most part they got along very well. You did not have this animosity between them. Even the Baltic states, it was not like we see it today. So I think it's unfortunate that was lost. Um, and you see people just at each other's throats, and you see how Baltic states right now behave. That they basically want to confiscate Russian cars. You cannot bring the laptop. You cannot bring cosmetics. You cannot bring some clothing. So basically, you have to go naked if you want to visit Europe. And you think about how it was back in Soviet Union. Um, it was different. But that's the thing. The movies, the books, everything. People read the same thing, and the books, the movies, the even the cartoons. They were kind of teaching people to be kind. I sometimes watch on occasion. I would watch some Soviet movie. Um,
What was your favorite Soviet movie to watch? So favorite
oh,
Soviet
I
movie?
mean, it's a lot of movies. I recently actually watched the movie. It's like a childhood movie. It's the Red Hood. The fairy tale about the Red Hood,
Never
about the
heard.
girl.
Oh, you mean Little Red Riding Hood? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, in Russian, it's called Red Hood. So it's about the girl who brings the pierogies to her grandma, and it's a very kind movie. You you don't see any propaganda in there. It's just like that. That's why I like right now to watch something or watch some old American movies because you don't see a lot of propaganda as you see it right now.
No, you don't. That's true.
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing that in I think people were just overall kinder. Um, People from all republics, they could travel to Moscow, to other cities. They like they were studying together, like in universities and working side by side. And
Was
obviously
this
they were.
in 50s and 60s when the Soviet Union was at its golden era? 50s, 60s,
No,
or
I think it was much later. I think I'm thinking about 60s, 70s, 80s. So I'm talking about like when my parents were growing up. So this is from from what they were telling me about. So it was much different. And if you and a lot of these republics, they were much stronger. If you look at the Baltics, if you look at all the Soviet republics, they had plants, they had a lot of these fabrics working. They had a lot of infrastructure, and now it's just decaying. So even like if you look at Ukraine, was one of the top economies when the Soviet Union collapsed, and they didn't build anything. They just squandered what was built during the Soviet times.
Mhm.
And then that's why they constantly beg for money. And I would like to ask people, well, if you think that Soviet Union was bad, and obviously, you know, it's not ideal. Let's just put it this way: it's not ideal. The form of government. I don't think that people would want to go back to it. I agree with that. But if you think that it was so bad, and when you gain independence, so-called independence, because they're not truly independent, they were always under influence of someone. If you think that it's better right now, why do you need always to beg for money from other countries? First, it
Mhm.
was Russia, and Russia was supplying them with money and with cheap gas and everything. And now it's the West. When no one is providing you with money, what are you going to do? Because they poured a lot of it into military in the past few years at the expense of education, healthcare, and everything else. Once it ends, so what are you going to do next? That's the question.
I see. So, do
So,
you think the Soviet Union was better placed than Russia is now, and do you think it was more democratic?
no, I don't think it was more democratic. Obviously, like Russia is more liberal right now than Soviet Union. It's just a lot of issues that that the West think that Soviet Union had were not actually issues. When they talk about education, education was actually better in Soviet Union than in Russia. In It was completely different, and people were very, very knowledgeable. The education level was actually very high. The literacy rate was very high. In terms of um, social security system, in terms of the healthcare in Soviet Union, people were more protected. I believe in many ways than in modern Russia. But again, it depends. It depends on the situation. It's just right now you might see some elderly people who don't have any kind of protection. They have a very small pension. They cannot get anything, any social service from Russia. While when they were in Soviet Union, they knew what they would get when they reach certain age. And the salary, let's say, of a plumber or an engineer was enough to sustain a family. Right now, it's similar to what the West has in Russia. People, like, there might be two income in the family, and it's not enough to feed the family. That's the thing. But yeah, again, it's a discussion for another time. But I don't think that Russia needs to go back to Soviet Union. And despite the fact that like some elderly population, they would want to get back to it because um, they still remember how it was. I don't think that many people want it, and I don't think that communism is the system that has to be implemented again. Because communism always ends in the same fashion. Every time when it was tried, every time it led to death, misery, some kind of violence, and I don't think it's a fair. I don't think it's a fair system. Let's just put it this way.
Mhm.
So, but some things in Soviet Union, they were actually good. As I said, education, um, and some people might take it out of context because they would say, "Well, you might say about the gulags." No, gulags were bad. Obviously, I don't support that. That's why I don't want to go back to the same system. You cannot you cannot go into river twice, right? So um, I think that system has to be studied. The lessons have to be learned from it, but I don't think it has to be repeated because I don't think it's going to work out.
Mhm. Anyways, thank you very much, Julia, for coming on. Is there anything you would else like to say before we finish?
No, it was actually great talking to you. My apologies, I could not offer more insight about Armenia and Azerbaijan.
You're fine.
It's
Don't worry
just
about it. You did a good job. You did a good job.
again, it's not the focus of my interest. I usually more focused on Ukraine. That's why I can offer more information on that and more analysis on that because I'm always in tune on that. But with regard to Armenia and Azerbaijan, I'm trying to read on more about this, but from what I see right now, it doesn't look good for Armenia, and I obviously I feel bad about this, because again, it's something that it's a small fire again near Russia, that was probably deliberately started, and if if anything, I think we'll see more things like that. Again, as you mentioned at the beginning, Moldova and Gagauzia, I think, one of the next hotspots, possibly Kazakhstan. Um, well, I don't know when we're gonna have peace.
I think it will be coming soon. It'll come soon. Have hope. Julia, where can people find you?
They can find me on Twitter. So I'm very active. Sometimes I write something on Twitter, and sometimes I just retweet some stuff. I make comments. Sometimes I comment podcasts. Sometimes I join spaces and talk about Ukraine and Russia. For the most part, sometimes I might talk about American politics as well, but for the most part, it's Russia and Ukraine because this is just I'm very passionate about and I love talking about. And obviously, we all have our biases, but I try to be, more objective with regard to that. People might disagree. People might think I'm biased. Well, to a degree, but I love to debate other people on that, and I actually I'm okay with people having different opinions if they can defend their point of view, if they can bring facts, and we can have a great conversation about that. That would be great.
Thank you very much, Julia, for coming on. It was a pleasure having you again. And I just want to say to everybody, please go and support Julia's work. She does very good content, very good Twitter posts. You really will enjoy the work she does, very knowledgeable. Please go and give her all the support she deserves by following on Twitter and liking her content. And thank you, everybody, for joining the Welsh Republic podcast, episode 128. Have a nice day. Please remember to like and subscribe and share this video to your family and friends. Have a nice day, everybody. Take care.